there, and welcome back to In the Hills Of, a true crime podcast based out of Austin, Texas. I am your host, Callie, and this week I'm going to be bringing you a story from In the Hills of West Virginia. The past 2 weeks, I've been interviewing people, doing research, trying to figure out how to tell you this story effectively, honestly, and while also keeping myself out of trouble. So let's go ahead and just dive right in. I'll be super honest, I've been trying to record this episode for a couple days now, and I haven't been getting anywhere. This case is frustrating, it makes me angry, and I am disappointed in our justice system. So you're probably wondering who I'm going to be talking about this week, and I'll go ahead and tell you. I am going to be telling you about Luke Stout. Luke was from Buchanan, West Virginia. That's in Upshur County, and if you're familiar with the state at all, Buchanan is a very small town. It's home to West Virginia Wesleyan College, which is a very small, private, liberal arts school, maybe about 1,400 students. And Buchanan is also a short drive from the Stonewall Jackson Resort in Roanoke, West Virginia. It's also the home to the Strawberry Festival, which in the wake of coronavirus has been postponed until 2021. And for a small town like Buchanan, I'd say that not having this festival is probably going to hurt them in some way. Like a lot of small towns and small businesses in the United States, I think that it's safe for me to say that I hope everyone is using precautions, washing your hands, not touching your face, which is like kind of part of who I am. I'm always touching my face. But yeah, stay inside, if you're not immune compromised, if you're not of, an elder age, you probably are upset that we're being isolated, but, be smart. So, coronavirus rant over. I'm just gonna go ahead and get into this because if I don't now, I never will. Like I said, this is a long time coming. I've been working hard on this, and it's frustrating, but it's a story that needs to be told, and I want to just start out by saying thank you to John Kilmeyer for helping me with this case this week. It has been a huge blessing. I am so thankful for you and everything that you've done for this episode. I also want to thank Luke's mother, Elizabeth. She's very ill, and she took the time out of her day to speak with me, and I know that was hard for her, and I want to say thank you, that you speaking with me is allowing me to tell this story effectively and in the light that it deserves. I think that it's appropriate to start this story by just telling you a little bit about who Luke was as a person. One of the things that stuck out the most to me when I was talking to Luke's mother was that she said that he was a person that you can count on, and I think that is powerful and holds a lot of meaning to it. I think that a lot of us probably only have, one or two people in our lives, if that we can count on. And having somebody that is reliable is comforting, and I hope that everyone has somebody that they can count on. Luke was also very creative. He played the guitar, and he was an amazing artist. Elizabeth shared some of his drawings with me, and I will share those on our Instagram page. He was very talented, and she also shared with me that he started working at the age of 16 to help them because, like I mentioned previously, Luke's mother was ill and unable to work, and that saved their family. It put food on their table and it paid their bills, and I think that's very selfless, for a 16-year-old to not put his income towards himself, but to put it towards his family. Beyond being caring and giving, Luke was, like most 20-year-olds or 24-year-olds, he enjoyed skateboarding, spending time with his close friends, and kicking back and watching some Netflix, and also just spending time with his family. Luke was the youngest of 3 brothers, and his mom often in Facebook posts refers to them as the 4 Musketeers. And I know that just like Elizabeth, they miss Luke and they want justice. Now that we have an idea of the kind of person that Luke was, the things that he enjoyed, I want to just go ahead and dive into the day that Luke was last seen. On July 18th, 2012, Luke received a phone call at his home where he lived with his mother and was a friend. And the only thing we know about this friend is that his name is Dylan. There is speculation to who this friend is in regards to the fact that Luke did have a few friends named Dylan, but confirmation as to which Dylan had called Luke that day is unknown. So a few days before Luke was last seen on July 18th, he had been riding his bicycle in town, and there was a handlebar malfunction, which left him to leave his bike in Buchanan. And Luke was riding his bicycle because his insurance had lapsed. He had forgotten to pay for it, so, being smart, he just didn't drive his vehicle. He chose the alternative route, and he was riding his bicycle to get from point A to point B. So when Luke received this phone call, the agreement was that he would be, I'm assuming, picked up by this person, Dylan, and they would go to Dylan's home and they would fix the bicycle that had broken down and was left in Buchanan. But this is where things get tricky. There's also another bicycle involved. So the day that Luke left his house, the day that Luke was last seen, he had the frame of another bicycle that he was going to be taking to Dylan's home, and they were going to be repairing this bike together. And the agreement was that they would also pick up the bike that Luke had left in town. Dylan would help him repair it, and they would also fix the bike that Luke was leaving his home with that day. And I believe that the bike that Luke had the day that he went missing, that bike was going to be kept by Dylan, and the bike that had been left in town was going to be fixed and kept by Luke. That's the story. That's the last day that Luke was seen. He got off the phone, he looked at his mom, he said, "I love you, I'll see you later," and said the same to his brother, walked down the driveway, and that's all we know. I want to take the time now to let you know what Luke was last seen wearing. On July 18th, Luke was wearing a prayer ring that he always wore. Maybe some of us would call this a worry ring. The center moves. He had on a black t-shirt, jeans, black sneakers with neon green laces, and at the time Luke also had short hair. A lot of the photos that you'll see of Luke, he had long hair, but I want to reiterate that at this time Luke's hair was short. And I will be posting photos on our Instagram that will show Luke with short and long hair. So we're at a point where Luke didn't come home. Where is Luke? I believe that his brother or brothers had gone out looking for him, and the story is a little unclear here, but they knew where Luke had left the bike, and they did go there, and the bike was still there. So we know that Luke didn't make it to that bike. I think that's a fair assumption. And when the brother or brothers found the bike, they immediately called the police, and, they were, in a sense, in a mode of, like, something here is not right, and this bike shouldn't be here, and since it is here, it's probably evidence, right? But police didn't think of it that way and told them to just load it up and take it home. So fast forward to July 21st. Luke is reported missing, and police come to where Luke lived, and it wasn't necessarily a neighborhood, but there are people around. He didn't live in the middle of nowhere, and from where Luke would have been picked up at the end of the driveway, there was a neighbor who could see that, and he gave a statement to the police. Police took that statement, but from what I've been told, his statement continues to change. And I can't find anything about why that is. I think that's kind of odd. But yeah, a statement was taken from this neighbor about Luke's last sighting, and all we know is that the story has changed quite a few times since then. And on July 29th, just 12 days after Luke was last seen, there was a candlelight vigil that was held at Jawbone Park in Buchanan, where family, friends, even former teachers of Luke's gathered and shared stories of him, lit candles, and overall, people just joined together to show support for the Stout family over their missing son. So, that's really all we know. Luke just kind of vanished, and that's why I'm here to tell these stories. It blows me away that somebody can just vanish, and I think it's safe to say that Luke didn't disappear by his own will. He was, a caretaker for his mother. He was a sole supporter in his home. I failed to mention that, after Luke graduated high school in 2007, he started a carpentry apprenticeship. So he was working at this time. And one of the things that we haven't been able to confirm is if he cashed his paycheck or not. And if he did, that money would have been in his wallet at the time that he disappeared. And I also should mention that none of Luke's belongings have ever been found. His clothes, his ring, his wallet, nothing has ever surfaced. Prior to Luke's disappearance, I'm going to bring a new name into this story now. A young man by the name of Josh Olberg had disappeared about 6 months prior to Luke's disappearance. Josh was last seen in January of 2012. And on July 23rd, just a few days after Luke went missing, Oberg's remains were found off of Bull Run Road in Upshur County. And on July 25th, they were positively identified as belonging to Josh Oberg. And this is where the story gets a little twisted, and I will proceed with caution. So I want you to bear with me. Let's take it back to 2011. Josh is alive, Luke is not missing, and it's unknown whether they know one another, but they do have something in common. And that is a relationship with a woman named Kelly. It's unclear the type of relationship that these men had with Kelly. I think that there's a lot of speculation around that, as if it was intimate or if it was just a friendship, but there was a relationship, and both Luke and Josh were involved with a married woman. And unfortunately, this left to the murder, or we could even say execution of Josh Oberg, and quite possibly is the reason that Luke is missing too. I have been told that I think about a year prior to Luke's disappearance, I'm really unclear on how long before Luke disappeared this happened. It could have just been a few months, but anytime Luke would go into town, people would tell him, Chino's gonna get you. Now you're probably wondering, who's Chino? Chino is the husband of Kelly, and he owned a Mexican restaurant in Buchanan. And to Luke's defense, he was tired of hearing these threats. So he went to that restaurant and he confronted Chino. And it's said that Luke was then threatened in person by Chino. A gun was held to his head. And I'm not sure if he, got roughed up or not, but a gun's held to your hand. I would consider that being roughed up, but as far as there was any other physical altercation, regardless, Luke went to the police and he tried to file a report, but he wasn't taken seriously, and therefore there is no actual documentation of this. So what do we know right now? Let's do a recap. We know that in January of 2012, Josh Oberg is reported missing. We know that July 18th, Luke was last seen, and he was supposed to be going to fix a bike with a guy named Dylan. We know that Josh and Luke were in some sort of relationship, whether that being intimate or just a kinship, with a woman named Kelly. We know that Kelly was a married woman, and we know that just a few days after Luke was reported missing, a body was found and later confirmed to be the body of Josh Oberg. So now I'm going to step away from Josh and I'm going to go back to Luke. Right after Luke was reported missing, there was a basic search that was supposedly done by police. And, we already know nothing turned up. But we also know that there were other people who offered their help. One of those organizations being Texas EquiSearch, based out of North Galveston County in Texas. Texas EquiSearch, if you're not familiar with them, is a pretty large organization and consists of over 1,000 members. They use searchers on horse and foot and ATVs. They've conducted searches in 42 states here in the United States and about 5 other countries as well. They've successfully returned over 400 missing people alive and to their families, as well as recovering the remains of over 238 people. And they offered their help for free to the Buchanan City Police or West Virginia State Police. And this help was denied. They said, no, thank you, we're good. And I, what? That makes me outraged. Somebody is offering their resources to you and you turned them down. Why would you do that? And one of the things that I've been wondering since I found out about Josh Oberg and the connection between him and Luke, revolving around Kelly, was his remains were found so closely after Luke had disappeared. And I wondered if police had gone to that area to search for Luke's remains. And I hate to say that, but I think it's a fair assumption that, Luke is more than likely probably not here with us anymore. And I haven't really been able to get a straight answer. This is an open and active case, so what police can share with us is limited, but I mean, they should at least be able to tell you if they've searched an area or not, right? That's something that would bring comfort to his family, knowing that steps were being taken in the right direction. It's not a secret that Josh and Luke were involved in a relationship with the same woman. That is a fact. And unlike the case that I covered 2 weeks ago about the 4 women who went missing from Austin, Texas in 1976, there's only speculation there that those women may or may not have known each other. there is no speculation in this case. It is stone cold facts. Josh and Luke were involved with the same woman. And this brings me to the next part. So I am flip-flopping back and forth here between Josh and Luke. So back to Josh. Shortly after his remains were found, arrests were made in his case. And currently 3 people have been prosecuted and are serving sentences in a West Virginia state prison for the murder of Josh Oberg. So Oberg's murder was a murder for hire. The woman that he was having relations with, Kelly, that ultimately led to the end of his life. You know, Kelly's husband chose to have Joshua murdered rather than leaving his wife or divorcing his wife. He hired 2 men, whom are Kelly's cousins, to kill Oberg. One of those men, Jesse Heater, he did not agree to a plea deal. He did not plead guilty, and ultimately will be spending the rest of his life in prison. The other gentleman, whose last name is Siren, I'm not super sure, again, probably butchering with the names, he did plead guilty, and he is actually eligible for parole of this year. As far as Chino, he was convicted of a few crimes. So he was convicted of second-degree murder, convicted of conspiracy, and he also was, when he was arrested, I believe he had 16 firearms. And so after he serves his sentence for murder and conspiracy, he will then consecutively serve a sentence in a federal prison for the unlawful obtainment of firearms. And after he serves these sentences, he will then be deported back to Mexico. Chino is eligible for parole, and his next parole hearing date is actually in July of 2023. But if he is unsuccessful in appealing his sentence, his projected release date is January of 2035. So I think it's safe to say that there's a possibility that these men also had something to do with Luke. Maybe not the 2 men who are related to Kelly, but definitely the man that Kelly was married to. An innocent until proven guilty, right? But when you've already been proven guilty of one crime over something that you could have chosen a different direction, like I said, you could have left your wife, you could have divorced your wife, but instead you chose to have the person that she was having a relationship with killed. You know, we know that Luke was having a relationship with this woman too. So here I am to ask the question, did Chino have Luke killed too? And that's a question that we may never get an answer to. But I think it's a fair question, and I know that it's one that Luke's mother asks and his brothers ask, and they have their speculations, as do I. Like I mentioned previously, I've been speaking with John Kilmeyer, who is a forensic scientist in West Virginia, and he has his own speculations and theories too as to what may have happened to Luke and where Luke is. But going back to something I said in the beginning is I'm disappointed in our justice system. I think that they have failed the Stout family, and I think that they have failed the people of West Virginia. You know, why haven't there been more searches? Why did they turn down help? Why have they not tried to seek answers? Doesn't really make any sense. It doesn't really add up. And some of the things that they have done, I don't think were done with good intention. I think they were done to, shut people up. To say, oh, hey, look, we did this, so therefore you can't say that we didn't do anything at all. Since Luke disappeared, the city of Buchanan has appointed a new district attorney. And I bring this up because I've been told that the previous district attorney told Luke's mother that he got what was coming, which I feel insinuates that Luke is missing due to the relationship that he was having with Kelly, who is Chino's wife, who hired 2 people to murder Josh Oberg. I've also been told that a police officer had told Elizabeth something along the lines of he shouldn't be messing around with Chino's wife. And again, I think that insinuates that the reason Luke is missing has something to do with the fact that he was in a relationship with Kelly. And I feel that it is important to hear all sides of the story. And I tried my best to speak with Kelly. And I was not able to. So I only have one side on this story. And that's okay. It's still a story that needs to be told. There's still plenty of information, and while I would like to hear what she has to say, if I'm not able to, that's fine. I also tried reaching out to family members of Kelly, and nobody really wanted to talk to me. Maybe rightfully so. That's, again, fine. So, with the information I have, and I think I've presented, a possibility of what may have happened to Luke. One last thing that I'm going to bring up, and I've questioned if it is the right thing to do or not, but if I'm going to tell this story, I should tell it in its entirety. I've been told by an anonymous source that there is a recording, and it states that there is involvement from Chino in the disappearance of Luke. I won't say any more than that, but I also know that police have been informed about this, and they haven't taken it up on themselves to listen to it, to obtain it, and I think that speaks volumes. I've said, a few times throughout this that I'm disappointed in the way this case has been handled, and I don't think I'm the only one. I think a lot more could be done, a lot more could have been done, and Luke's mom has tried to find a light in all of this, and I commend her for that. She is very active on social media about Luke and other missing people in West Virginia. And I would say that that's something that, I don't know if it gives her hope, but, if she can help spread the word about other people who are missing, like Luke, I think that some sort of comfort is probably brought through that. At the time Luke Stout disappeared, he was 24 years old. He had brown hair, brown eyes, weighed 120 pounds, and stood between 5 feet 6 or 7 inches. If you have any information regarding the whereabouts of Luke Stout, you can call the West Virginia State Police at 304-473-4200. You can also call an anonymous tip line at 304-473-1001. You can also call Luke's mother, Elizabeth, at 304-472-2141 with any information regarding the disappearance of Luke Stout. You can also visit Luke's mother's Facebook page at Missing in West Virginia, where she is an advocate for those who have disappeared. Again, if you have any information regarding the disappearance or whereabouts of Luke Stout, I urge you to reach out to the West Virginia State Police. You can anonymously leave a tip. Your name does not have to be involved in this in any way, shape, or form. Somebody has an answer, and at this point, it's just a matter of time and a matter of doing the right thing. I think things like this eat at people. It eats them alive. And I again want to thank John Kilmeyer, who did a lot of research for me. He did a lot of digging. I failed to mention previously that John did reach out to the West Virginia State Police for me, and they were not very happy to speak about him or to hear that there was a podcast that would be talking about Luke. And I think that speaks volumes. I understand it's an open case. I understand the information that they can give me is limited. Maybe they feel I'm trying to do their job or that I might compromise their investigation. But I think it's safe to say that their investigation is not going anywhere. And I also don't think that they've taken all the steps that they could to try to figure out what happened to Luke or find where Luke is. If you would like to have a story featured on In the Hills Of, you can email us at inthehillsof@gmail.com. You can also visit our Instagram page at In the Hills Of Podcast. Thank you for listening to this week's episode. I hope you will tune back in next Thursday. I'll be covering a story from the hills of Kentucky.